The Indianapolis 500 has been home to some incredible pieces of history, some of which has been good while others have been forgotten in the shelves of time itself. From the greatest finishers to the track's most forgotten drivers to win at the Yard of Bricks, here are 10 drivers, including 3 extra ones, who you may have forgot won the Indianapolis 500. Number 1. Buddy Lazier. Lazier ran one of the most successful seasons seen by many, as him being a superstar in the USAC Champ Car Series, even though there was one thing that made him stand out from the rest of the field at the Indy 500 that season in 1996. He recorded 0 wins, no top 5s, and 0 top 10s in his entire racing career, going into the 1996 Indianapolis 500 and become one of the first drivers in history to win with absolutely no victories to speak of. People viewed him as an afterthought. People viewed him as an underrated driver. But when he won that year's 1996 Indy 500, this would be a rare feat, but also a big one for Lazier, as after this, he would not record another win until 2 more wins in 2000. Lazier would end up making even more noise in the Indianapolis 500 as he at one point in 2008 tried to take the lead to not only secure another Indianapolis 500 win, but he became close so many times as he ran the race until 2017. Number 2. Emerson Fittipaldi. His nephew Christian, as mentioned in a video from Black Flags Matter, turned out to be a disaster in NASCAR, but he knew that his uncle's racing career in IndyCar made the sport to him and his family a part of his own DNA. Fittipaldi made a name for himself before the 500, winning the 1989 Champ Car Championship and finishing 3rd in the next season in 1990. He, along with his family, already were making noise in the racing community. As a champ and kart driver, he was allowed to race in the 1993 Indy 500, even with these credentials. In the 1993 500, just like Sam Hornish Jr. did in 2006, there was a chance for the Andretti curse to end as Mario tried to finish near the end, but Fittipaldi had other ideas as he led the pack through the rest of the race and won that year's Indianapolis 500. Not much detail is known about Fittipaldi at this point, but we all know him for his iconic legacy for breaking yet again another Andretti curse. Number 3. Arie Luyendyk. Luyendyk has had a very eventful career out of most of the drivers that I mentioned on this list. He was a controversial driver in his time in IndyCar, as seen as in the one time with AJ Foyt shoving him to the fence. He not only completed the single greatest lap in Indianapolis 500 qualifying history, but he also won the 1990 Indy 500 against some of the biggest competitors, including Emerson Fittipaldi, Eddie Cheever, Bobby Rahal, Al Unser and Al Unser Jr., AJ Foyt, and Rick Mears, who all were Indy 500 champions and finished within the top 20 of the list at the Indianapolis 500. He not only defied the odds to win the championship, he had an even more incredible history and a more weird history during the race, before and after. But his life would become as fast as that. Luyendyk today is an avid YouTuber along with his wife as they are happily married, and he has appeared on the show The Bachelor. He's not the only driver, though, who has ever won the Indy 500 to appear on that show as well. Number 4. Sam Hanks and Jimmy Bryan. This section, like number 7, will include 2 drivers who ran both on the same team and were the first co-champions in back-to-back seasons running for the same team. Born in Phoenix, Arizona, Bryan would later pass away as a result of injuries sustained in a Champ Car race in Langhorne Speedway in 1960. But before we ever knew Jimmy Bryan, he actually was the 1957 Indianapolis 500 champion for a team that his predecessor, Sam Hanks, would end up winning the next year in the same car and same ride. Not much is known about them, but we do know that Sam Hanks ended up winning the 1958 500 in a dynamic fashion. His 500 victory would be one of the only ones for the two drivers involved, as Hanks would later have a career of his own, but he would die in 1994, and Brian, as mentioned, he would have passed away in 1960. Number 5. Watch this.
For the year, here comes J.R. Hildebrand, this time by the white flag is in hand. 2.5 miles. Come on, baby, bring it home. Keep going. The 23-year-old from Sausalito, California. Listen to the crowd cheer him on.
And how fitting for the National Guard car to win if he can indeed do that. Has he got enough fuel to make it to the end?
Half a lap. He's got half a lap to go, and he's the Indy 500 champion. Panther Racing, oh so good. They finished second here, twice here. They come again through the final two corners. J.R. Hildebrand. Careful of traffic. He's got to get around the lap. Traffic. 100 years. No! He hit the wall. Just like Thomas Schechter.
Keep your foot on the gas.
Dan Weldon is going to win the race.
Yeah, Dan!
That is unbelievable. Oh my goodness.
Starting off as one of the most promising young rookies in the Indy Lights series, where he was a driver in 2009 and scored 4 wins with 10 podiums and 5 pole positions with 775 laps led throughout that season. J.R. Hildebrand was bound to be one of the greatest drivers and upset makers in Indianapolis 500 history. And yes, he lost, but I still considered him for this list. He was never expected to even be in the front of the pack leading into the 500. But with 4 laps to go, he showed his chance to represent not just his country, but for Panther Racing, as the guy behind him would end up being the late Dan Weldon, driving in a National Guard car that Weldon would previously have driven before Hildebrand did. This race was one for the books, as Hildebrand was smooth sailing with 2 laps to go to win the entire race. But call it karma, call it bad luck, or call it a gift from God that Dan Weldon would get his last victory in IndyCar before what ultimately happened later that season. This would change Hildebrand's whole racing career, from being a 4-win driver in the Indy Lights series to becoming the most unsuccessful driver in IndyCar history, with so forgotten of a past, people didn't even remember he even ran. This one race would be his only podium he would ever make in his IndyCar career. He has quit running in the IndyCar series as of last year in 2022. To finish his career, he scored 0 wins during his whole career, and even tried racing in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in 2021. Even though he lost the Indianapolis 500 in the most embarrassing choke job ever, Hildebrand would suffer in more ways than one from the defeats of actually losing the Indianapolis 500. Number 6, Dario Franchitti. Franchitti is now one of IndyCar's most forgotten drivers in history. Not so much so now, but did you know that even with him being forgotten, he left a delightful legacy in IndyCar? In 2007, 2010, and 2012, he raced with a purpose. 2007 was delayed by rain as he became the first Scottish-born driver in Indy 500 history to win the race, outmatching the rest of his future competition with Scott Dixon and again Dan Weldon. 2010 was without a doubt his most forgotten Indianapolis 500 as he led the race for most of the time. But 2012 was different because Franchitti lost his friend Dan Weldon the previous year. But the race itself ended up being one of the greatest Indy 500s of his career. He would end up being behind Takuma Sato with just laps left to go as he slammed into the wall, causing a race-winning caution. And just like the rain of '07, and just like in 2010, he ran with the purpose, winning his third Indianapolis 500. But at the end of his career, Franchitti put himself in the names of Mears, Castroneves, Unser, Foyt, and Mears as one of the more forgotten drivers, but also one of the greatest drivers to have ever run in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Number 7, Floyd Davis and Maury Rose. This story has already been mentioned on the channel Black Flags Matter, which that video is in the description below, but I'd like to add a little bit more context to the story. These two winners were actually considered co-champions in the very last race of what was part 1 of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, before, of course, you had the Holman family take it over and remodel it to the stadium it is today. But back in 1941, an uncertain future was looming in the United States of America as World War II was beyond us. And before Pearl Harbor, one of the more iconic Indy 500s was ever raced. And Floyd Davis, who ended up being the driver to start with, would actually get replaced by Maury Rose, who also drove his vehicle in what was the last Indy 500 before World War II, and they were both considered co-champions in the last race. But we all remember the 500 for what it is and what it has become. But if it weren't for these two drivers that won the 500, we would have probably never have seen the Indy 500 again. Number 8, Roger Ward. Roger Ward was a two-time champion of the Indianapolis 500, actually winning his first in 1959. He was a World War II P-38 aviator in the United States Army Air Forces and an American race car driver with 26 victories in top echelon open-wheel racing. Besides IndyCar, he was a legend in Formula One, winning the most there than he did in his IndyCar career. He would end up again winning twice, and having such a delicate legacy on the world of racing as a whole before he later passed away. Number 9, Graham Hill. In 2005, Dan Wheldon became the first Indy 500 champion, since this name I will mention would later win the Indianapolis 500 out of the country of Great Britain. The driver to do it before Wheldon was Graham Hill, who won the 1966 Indy 500. Hill was the Formula One world champion twice, winning in 1962 and in 1968, and he had also won a Le Mans 24 Hours in 1972. He would later pass away in November of 1975, as not much detail was found about him, but he was able to win the 1966 500, his only one. And in 2009, due to his long-standing racing career, he was inducted into the IMS Hall of Fame. Number 10, Mark Donohue. Donohue was always bored to be a race car driver, as his car became as synonymous as him and his driving abilities. Donohue's nickname, and this I found really interesting, was known as 1500 plus BHP Can-Am Killer Porsche 917-30. I'm not joking here. This was his nickname, as this would be Donohue's only Indy 500 win in 1972, and he drove the car, and that nickname really stuck out. Donohue is also the first ever Penske driver in the history of the Penske racing team. For its long history, you gotta thank him for being the first of many to pave way in the Penske racing scheme. Donohue was later inducted to the Indianapolis Hall of Fame in 2004. Here is one extra driver at number 11, and his name is Laura L. Coram. Coram is probably the most forgotten of the Indy 500 champions, and not only that, won the championship at a time when records were only just a thing of the past. Born in Jonesville, Indiana, he was a worker first and driver second, just like many of the drivers that were racing in the 1920s in the Indy 500. While Coram received the prize money and was credited with the victory in the 1924 race, the track later changed his winnings to Joe Boyer, who replaced Coram in 109 laps in. Not much was known about this driver, but we can for sure say that he is a part of history and one of the first Indianapolis 500 tracks, and at the time was one of a very few people from Indiana that won the race. These 11 drivers all stood their part in Indianapolis history, as many of them became almost an afterthought in Indianapolis history. But we need to know these names, and we need to know them well, especially going into this race on Sunday, where history is the only thing that provides evidence. Thank you so much